عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعوذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله أتاذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوزي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتأذن لأن أكون معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا أخي ووسي وخليفتي وصاحب لواي قد أذنت لك فدخل علي تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وآله ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي قد أذنت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ برسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمس مزية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مضية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله عليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنهم نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لي أبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبين إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبين وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله همه إليهم ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه إليهم ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. عجل فرج. سورة فاتحة تمام مرحومين کے لیے اللهم صل على
محمد وآل محمد بلند تر صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سلام کے چند بند آپ کی سماعتوں کی نظر. مجرئی خلق میں ان آنکھوں نے کیا کیا دیکھا مجرئی خلق میں ان آنکھوں نے کیا کیا دیکھا صبت پیمبر ثنا آقا دیکھا مجرے خلق میں نے دیکھا عالم شاخ کو آلود خون میں نے دیکھا عالم شاخ کو آلود خون میں نے نیزے پہ سر دلبر زغرا دیکھا مجرے خلق میں نے دیکھا لیت سے غر کا گلا خون میں تر میں نے دیکھا لیت سے غر کا گلا خون میں تر میں نے زخمی علی اکبر کا کلیجہ دیکھا مجرے خلق میں ایک گٹھڑی شہدی پشت پہ لائے جس میں ایک گٹھڑی شہدی پشت پہ لائے جس میں میں نے ٹکڑے ہوئے قاسم کا سراپا دیکھا مجرے خلق میں کہتی تھی زینب مستر کے خدا خیر کرے کہتی تھی زینب مستر کے خدا خیر کرے رات کو خواب میں اریاں سرے زہرا دیکھا مجرے خلق میں جا کے زینب نے مدینے میں کہا سغرا سے جا کے زینب نے مدینے میں کہا صغرا سے کہوں کیسے موس کے پردیس میں کیا کیا دیکھا مجرئی خلق میں ان آنکھوں نے کیا کیا دیکھا پر کہیں سبت پیمبر ثنا آقا دیکھا مجرئی خلق میں پر محمد وعلی محمد صلوات
على محمد وآل محمد
ایک درود اور پڑھ دیں محمد وآل محمد تاریخ کی مناسبت سے ہی سوچ کے 6 میں سے ایک صلوات اور پڑھ دیں محمد وآل یا منتقم ظہور امام زمان دکھا یا منتقم ظہور امام زمان دکھا آنکھیں ہیں منتظر رخ آرام جان دکھا دنیا میں ایک بار پھر امن و امان دکھا پھر برق ذوالفقار کو آتش فشان دشمن رہے نہ ایک شہ مشرقین کا، اس دن غلام سوگ اتارے حسین کا، یا منتقم. درود پڑھ دیں محمد علیہ محمد. جناب عزت لکھنوی کے کلام کے چند اشعار، وقت میں گنجائش نہیں ہے زیادہ. ایک درود پڑھ دے محمد علیہ محمد. اللہم صلی. اور اس کی تنویریں بہت کربلا، کربلا ایک آفتاب، اور اس کی تنویریں بہت کربلا، کربلا ایک آفتاب. ایک کتاب آگہی، ایک کتاب آگہی، جس کی ہے تفسیریں بہت کربلا، کربلا ایک آفتاب، اور اس کی تنویریں بہت کربلا. پنج تن کے نقش سینے میں سجا کر رکھ لیے، پنج تن کے نقش سینے میں سجا کر رکھ لیے. قاصب تقدیر نے، کاتب تقدیر نے دکھلائی تصویریں بہت کربلا، کربلا ایک آفتاب، اور اس کی تنویریں بہت کربلا ہیں. 72 تن شریک مقصد ذبح عظیم ہیں، 72 تن شریک مقصد ذبح عظیم. ایک خلیلی خواب تھا جس کی ہے تعبیریں بہت کربلا، کربلا ایک آفتاب، اور اس کی تنویریں بہت کربلا. رک سکا کب راستہ شیر خدا کے شیر کا، رک سکا کب راستہ شیر خدا کے شیر کا، روکنے کو لاکھ تھی ساحل پہ شمشیریں بہت کربلا، کربلا ایک آفتاب، اس کی تنویریں بہت کربلا. بیڑیاں پیروں میں اور گردن میں طوقے خاردار، پھر بھی پہنائی گئیں عابد کو زنجیریں بہت کربلا، کربلا ایک آفتاب، اور اس کی تنویریں بہت کربلا، کربلا ایک آفتاب. سورہ فاتحہ. صلی علی
محمد وآل
یہ سے
محمد.
درخواست ہے تھوڑا اور آگے آ جائیے، لوگ ابھی آتے جائیں گے، تھوڑا آگے آ جائیں.
ایک درود پڑھتے جائیں اور آگے آتے جائیں. اللہم صلی علی محمد و علی چھٹ کر پہ در سے بے کسو تنہا تھے عسکری، چھٹ کر پہ در سے بے کسو تنہا تھے عسکری، پابند حکم خالق یکتا تھے عسکری، حق کے ولی تھے خلق کے مولا تھے عسکری، احسان تھا جس کا جوش وہ دریا تھے عسکری، ابر کرم تھے بحرے سخا تھے زمانے میں، ویسے ہی جیسے ہوتے رہے اس گھرانے میں، ویسے ہی جیسے ہوتے رہے اس گھرانے میں، سامرے میں جو قید ہوا 11واں امام حضرت کو بھی رلاتا رہا ماجرائے شام، گویا نظر کے سامنے تھا واقعہ تمام، قیدی نہ تھے بصورت سجادے نیک نام، ملتے تھے دوستوں سے جدائی بھی ہوتی تھی، ہو جاتے تھے اسیر رہائی بھی ہوتی، ہو جاتے تھے اسیر رہائی بھی ہوتی، موقع ملا تو زہر دیا شے کو بے گناہ، لخت دل رسول کی حالت ہوئی تباہ، بیمار ہو کے اٹھنا سکا حجت الہ، مکار معتمد ثنا ہوگا خدا گواہ، بھیجے طبیب اس نے دوا کرنے کے لیے، پوشیدہ اپنا حال جفا کرنے کے لیے، پوشیدہ اپنا حال جفا کرنے کے لیے، خدمت کو آئے چند نصر خادم امی، فرما روا کی سمت سے حاضر ہوا وزیر، کہنے لگا یہ قاضی قضات سے شریر، جا تو بھی انتظام کو خدمت ہے یہ اخی، سامان تھا یا شے عالم کی فوت کا، وہ کروٹیں وہ کرب جوانی کی موت کا، پینے کا قصد کرتے تھے سلطان خاصواں، یہ ذوف تھا کہ دانتوں سے ٹکرا رہا تھا جام، سیقل نے روکا جام رہے آپ تشنا کا، دیکھا کہ ہو گئے شہ دنیا و دین تمام، وارث جو تھے حسین علیہ السلام کے، پیاس ही पहुँचे पास रसूल अनाम के, प्यासे ही पहुँचे पास रसूल अनाम के, छुटकर पे दर से बेकसो तन्हा थे अस्करी।
मोहम्मद व आली मोहम्मद।
Mu'mineen, salaam alaikum. I request you all to come a bit closer to the minbar because more people will be attending today's lecture. I now welcome Sheikh Vinay to the minbar so that we can start today's lecture. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من اللعين الغوي الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين، والصلاة والسلام على خيرة خلق الله أجمعين، وهو رحمة الله للعالمين، هو أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الميامين المهديين المعصومين المظلومين الميامين المقتولين، ولعنة الله دائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم دين. أما بعد، فقال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، فلا اقتحم العقبة وما أدراك ما العقبة فك رقبة. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
Today I want to briefly explore some of the contributions of our 11th Imam salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
And what I've chosen, well, I have an introduction, and then you'll see where he fits in to this tafsir of Surah Al-Balad, of these verses that I began with. Just to put it in context, the 11th Imam's contributions span in a variety of fields. So many different fields. I have an entire encyclopedia about him, Mawsu'at al-Imam Askari, for example. So in each volume, it's in, I think, 6 volumes that I have. There's a chapter on the Quran, his contributions to the Quran, the tafsir that's been attributed to him, the letters that have been written to him, the du'as that he has taught, the ziyarat that he has taught, the fiqh in almost many of the abwab of fiqh that he has given us instruction about imamat, about nabuwat, about qiyamah, about the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on and on and on and on. There is so much to discuss about the 11th Imam. We don't know his huge contribution. Multiple books could be written about his contributions to Islamic thought. And more discoveries, I think, to a certain extent, are still happening about his contributions. For example, I recently discovered a letter in a manuscript, which was otherwise, as far as I know, unknown, but I was going through a manuscript from the year 502 AH from Mashhad. It's one of the old books of Dua Misbah al-Mutahajjid, and then at the back of the manuscript was inscribed in a very old Arabic without any dots and nuqat on it, a letter from the 11th Imam transmitted by Safar al-Qummi, Sahib Asar al-Darajat, to the father of Sheikh Saduq. Now, we didn't know that the 11th Imam was in touch with the father of Sheikh Saduq. And then I found this letter narrated by Safar, Sahib Asar al-Darajat, one of the early muhaddithin. This is just handwriting on one of the extra pages of an old manuscript that I found in the library of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. And in this letter, he talks about birrul walidain and different things, obeying one's parents and helping the community and things like this. But the point is that we are still discovering things about the 11th Imam. This is still a scientific process of discovery about his huge contributions to Islam in tafsir, in fiqh, in spirituality, in supplication, ziyarat, in political issues of the time, the letters and the exchanges that he had with different people in the Muslim community at that time. There's so much to know about him. But today, we're going to just narrow down on something very specific. So I've begun with some of the verses from Surah Al-Balad, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, will he not attempt to traverse the steep path, Al-Aqaba? وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةِ. You know that he doesn't perceive what this path is. فَكُّ رَقَبَةِ, the freeing of a slave. Now I want us to stop here and just think about these three verses from Surah Al-Balad. Some of you have maybe memorized the surah. This is a moral challenge that has been forward to humanity. It's a moral challenge. The freeing of a slave. Think of this. This is a moral challenge that Allah is bringing forward. That yes, it exists in the society, but the steep path to God is to give up what your luxuries are. Think of this. This is the moral challenge to humanity. This is what made the Quran so revolutionary. Otherwise, bringing and speaking about, okay, there's one God. They knew there was one God. It existed already. It wasn't an absent idea. It was the profound moral consciousness that was awakened by the Quran. The moral, ethical consciousness within insan, they know that every human being has a degree of dignity. Every human being has izzat. And yes, this exists within the society, and my discussion is not about slavery tonight. But the point is that the Prophet comes now to Arabia in the 7th century, 1440 some odd years ago. And he's now presenting to them a moral challenge. And a part of that moral challenge is what? What does he say? قَالَ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ إِنَّ أَمَامَكُمْ عَقَبَةً كُؤُودًا. That there is a very steep path ahead of for you. لَا يُجَوِّزُهَا الْمُثَقَّلُونَ. That those who have weight on their shoulders will not be able to traverse this path. فَأَنَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُخَفِّفَ عَنْكُمْ لِتِلْكَ الْعَقَبَةِ. But all I want to do is to lessen that burden on your shoulders so that you can traverse the path of life. That I'm giving you the tools to make the correct moral decisions in life. The Quran here, through the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is speaking to the very depths and the recesses of our moral consciousness as Muslims, as human beings, as insan. This is what the message is about. Why is it speaking to this? Because we have to understand this concept of personal consciousness. The religions of the book, the Abrahamic religions, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, the prophets that brought these messages all had one united message, and that spoke to the very essence of the human being, that what makes a true human being. It speaks to the very depths of their consciousness. And they're told in the Quran by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the path ahead is steep. It's not easy. It's a aqaba. It's upwards. It's climbing. And the only way that you can traverse that path is by living a good, clean, moral, ethical life that the Prophet has come to explain to us what it looks like. Because if human beings could be left on their own to know what that was, then why have a prophet to begin with? His message is superfluous then. If humans can innately somehow just know what is good and what is evil, then why have a prophet? Why go through the burden of having a prophet? The Prophet says, I am here to lessen that burden upon your shoulders. That if you follow me, it's not for me. There's nothing for me. It's to lessen your shoulders. Because you and I, as insan, are accountable for one essential thing. What is that one essential thing, mu'mineen? One essential thing we are accountable for. Our very existence. For the very fact that we exist, that we have wujud, we are mas'ool for that wujud. The Prophet is coming and telling us that I'm giving you a way to live your life so that you can be correctly accountable for the gift of existence itself.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
And that gift of existence cannot be understood, lived to its fullest, to its most, it cannot have flourishing without the service of humankind. The love, compassion, equity, justice, and dignity. This is a message from Surah Al-Balad. And this is what the Prophet came. Again, within the context of Arabia, there were feuding tribes and so on and so forth, the rampant loss of control. And he's saying here that I've come to lessen your load. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to free a slave. Why? Because it costed money at that time. It wasn't easy to free a slave. Something you owned. It's a major asset in those days. Human beings could be bought and purchased. That was the nature of the world that existed at that time, 1400 years ago and 1,000 years before that. Slavery existed. But to give that up was essentially like selling, essentially in modern day sense, it was like selling a major asset that you own. Or rather not selling it, but giving it away. Making do without it. And the Quran is saying that we cannot travel to God with our hearts until we learn to give up what we love for the betterment of our fellow human being. This is the message of the Quran. This is the message of the Prophet. There is no true Islam without it. We are not Muslims in the true meaning of this word without it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Why? In the same surah, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We have created human beings for toil, for hard work. كَبَدْ, ta'ab. Because it is not easy to serve Allah through the love, compassion, and service of humanity. Of course, within the Sharia and the conditions that the Prophet has given, of course. and the Ahlul Bayt. It's not easy. That's why Allah says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We've created the human being in this world that there will be difficulty, kabad, toil, ta'ab, tiredness, sacrifice, tragedy. The human being has to first accept that reality. We live in a world, unfortunately, where everyone is babied. They don't want kabad. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. Human beings, in order to discover their internal strength, their potential that Allah has put within each and every one of us in our consciousness, in the depths of our soul, we have to experience kabad. That's difficulty, trial, loss, sacrifice, wealth, sleep, physical sacrifice, whatever it be. Motherhood is a part of kabad. There's no doubt about that. And that's why the one who denies motherhood and does not seek motherhood out intentionally because they want to somehow think that they can live a flourishing life outside of motherhood, we're told is from the signs of Akhiru Zaman, of the end of times, because it's a sign that the human being is avoiding the purpose. One of the purposes that Allah has created them in this world is a Muslimah for, and a Muslim. Meaning to intentionally say that I can live a good life, I'm able to have children, I'm married, so on and so forth, but I intentionally choose not to have children because I think that that is a virtuous way of being in this world. I'm not making a shar'an argument here. This is not a shari argument. It's a moral one. Because they're avoiding kabad, toil, difficulty, trial. This is a coward. In the eyes of Allah, this is a coward. This person has no value in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If this is the reason. If this is the reason. Because Allah praises childbirth on and on in Quran Kareem, doesn't Allah? Why? Because there's kabad in it. It's difficult. There's a huge reward for it. But we live in a world where we run away today from these difficulties. In a pampered, where adults never grow out of adult diapers, metaphorically speaking. They want to be pampered their entire life. They don't want to grow up. This is precisely antithetical in opposition to the message of the Quran, which is that if we want to grow up and we want to find strength within, we have to experience some difficulties. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Why? A Bedouin came to the Prophet. Look at this. He said, teach me something that will take me to paradise. The Mufassirun, like Tabarsi's Majma' al-Bayan, has put this under the tafsir of Surah Al-Balad. He said, do two things, the Prophet says. Give a slave freedom and free a slave. What? Wait a second. Give a slave freedom and free a slave. Ataka nisma wa tanfarida bi utqiha. Wa fakka raqaba. أن تعين في ثمنها. Meaning, you're giving up an asset. This is what the Prophet is saying here. It's not just about freeing a slave, but its value should be something that you give up. That there should be a cost. That if you want to go to heaven, this is what he's saying. This is the point here. Right? He's saying, give a slave freedom and free a slave. Meaning you're doing two things. You're giving somebody their freedom and you're freeing a slave at the same time. Meaning you are freeing your own inner slavery as well to this. Because there should be a thaman, there should be a price for it, he says. If you want, this is the Bedouin coming. This is a simple thing. If you want to go to heaven, learn to sacrifice. Learn to sacrifice. Learn to give up something. وَالْفَيْ عَلَى ذِي الرَّحِمَ الظَّالِمِ. This is amazing. And befriend a family relation who did wrong to you. Zalim. Zalim. Arab Bedouin looks at him. I thought you were going to go say pray 5 rak'ah, 5 namazes or something, or 1,000 namazes, 1,000 rak'ah. No. Befriend someone from your family who's done oppression to you. Meaning not a killer and stuff. We're talking about just fixing family issues. We're not talking about Yazid and Saddam and murderers and things. No. This is, of course, insan is aqil. Using their aqil, they know what Prophet is talking about. Solving family issues. Befriend that person. Give to them. Ar-Rahm al-Zalim. That's amazing. This is the Aqaba, right? That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Allah has created human beings for difficulty. Kabad. This is kabad. It's not easy. It's easy to keep relations with the ones that we are friends with. It's much harder to fix the relationships that are broken. Just forgive and forget. Put it behind you. Consider the debt done. If we can't do that, then according to the Prophet, we're not rising to the occasion. Then the Prophet says, okay, if you can't do that, then do something else. But before I get to that point, I want to mention something in between. This brings us to Imam Askari alayhi salam. And this is to prepare us for the Mawlid al-Nabi, which is coming up, the birthday of the Messenger of God, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in which Imam al-Askari wrote a letter to one of his companions about Nabuwah. Nabuwah and Imamah, both. As I said, there's volumes. I think I have 6 of these volumes, and that's not everything. We're just choosing one statement here. إنما خاطب الله العاقل وليس أحد يأتي بآية أو يظهر دليلا أكثر. He says that Allah speaks to our inner consciousness. خاطب الله العاقل. This is very interesting here. Listen to this. When Allah speaks to us, through the Quran, of course, He's speaking to something within us already. It's very important. There's something essence within us. There's some essence within us that has to wake up. This is what the Imam is saying. And there isn't something greater that Allah has spoken to us with. مِمَّا جَاءَ بِهِ خَاتِمُ النَّبِيِّينَ وَسَيِّدُ الْمُرْسَلِينَ than what the Messenger of God has brought. There's nothing greater. There is no greater effect on human consciousness to affect human change, to affect human revolution, to affect a total improvement in human behavior and life outcome, moral and ethical life outcome, than what was brought by the Messenger of God. He begins with this. Everything begins with the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was nothing greater, that God has not reached our intellect, our reason within us with anything greater than what the Messenger of Allah has brought us. That's why he's Afdalul Anbiya wal Mursaleen. That's why he's Khatamul Anbiya. Khatamul Nabiyyin. The seal of the messengers of God, the seal of the prophets. Because he spoke to us with a profound moral challenge. He united 2 things. The search for knowledge with the search for God. And the 2 become one. That's the civilization that he brought. This is what Imam Al-Askari is telling us. that the intellect is not affected by anything more pure and more beautiful than what the Messenger of God has brought. Then he goes on to say, وَقَالُوا الْكَاهِنْ وَالسَّاهِرْ وَكَذَّابٍ. Yet people called him, as Imam Al-Askari tells us, a sorcerer, a magician, a liar. Yet despite all of this, what does Imam Al-Askari tell us? هُدِيَ مَنْ اهْتَدَى. Guided was the one who was guided. Isn't that amazing? People called him a magician, a liar, na'udhu billah. So of course these are all verses from Quran Kareem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us this in Quran. A kahin, a modern day version of some kind of, person that allegedly can, make devious miracles or foretell the future. Yet people were still guided. Even though he says the majority or rather a large number of people, أَنَّ الْأَدِلَّةَ يَسْكُنُ إِلَيْهَا كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. Yet many people were going in another direction against him. Yet those who were guided. Because there's something within them that woke up. There was something that was transformative within them. And again, that brings us to that moral message, to that profound message. I mean, when he tells someone, give and have relations with the one who's oppressed you from your family. That's hard. I don't know if this really dawns on everyone in that time. People are like, whoa, this is the path. And each time you do it, your soul is liberated further and further and in a greater way from being enslaved, from being colonized. But we live in a world today where these kinds of values are not spoken highly of. Which are attached to God, that's the thing. For the sake of God, in the way of God, in the way of the Prophet. I'll read you an interesting quote from a British colonialist in India, T.B. Macaulay. He wrote, when they instituted the English education system in India, he says, I've never found one among them who could deny that a single shelf of good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. The intrinsic superiority of Western literature is indeed fully admitted by those members of the committee who support the Oriental plan of education. This is how they changed the education system of India, right? And we see this in Pakistan now today, unfortunately, and the whole of Middle East. Right? Brothers don't, some of my friends in India and Pakistan don't even know Urdu anymore. It's a terrible situation. We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern. A class of persons, Indian in blood and color, but English in tastes, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. Open! T.B. Macaulay. Macaulay's Minute on Indian Education, February 2nd, 1835. He said one shelf of our English Gora library is worth more than the entire collection of the Arabic and Indian books combined, of everything they have. Just one shelf, he said. Because we teach them how to be human beings. And I'm pointing the finger because you could imagine he's pointing finger in some arrogant, racist, nasty way. And this idea that somehow their way of life, and now here I'm not talking about the West or East, I'm talking about a way of thinking and a kind of epistemic colonization, colonizing a way of thinking. Such that the messenger of Allah does not factor into that then. Their messengers are who? Kant, Rousseau, these politicians, philosophers that create constitutions, declarations, so on and so forth. Long gone is Jesus Christ for Mr. Macaulay. in any real sense. And then they created that education system that already existed in England, right? And they brought it to India, which was, of course, included Pakistan. It's 1835. It's the whole of South Asia at the time, including Bangladesh. And they imposed it. Somehow then you have what you call, these so-called educated Muslims came out of those schools. As if the Quran and the Prophet never came to teach us how to be civilized as human beings. What have we just spoken about? And people buy these things, and they're deluded by these things, and somehow they think they're educated. They think they have something to offer the world. And our Prophet has already come. And nothing will affect your intellect and speak to the deepest sense of your consciousness more than what he has brought. Because he doesn't only bring knowledge to us. He brings the entire purification of the soul, an entire system, an entire way of life, an entire being, entire comprehensive, holistic way of viewing ourselves and the world. Including all of humanity within it, so not excluding other human beings from within that world, regardless of religion, regardless of race. This is not at the exclusion of non-Muslims. What does Imam Askari again say? Salu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's so beautiful. There's a verse from Surah Nur, as you know. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, right? Mathalu nurihi kamishkat. And Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. And his likeness is like the recess in a wall. Like a shelf in the wall. If you cut an indent in the wall. And within the wall is the lantern, the wick, the oil, everything, right? Let me ask you, can you have a lantern without the recess in the wall? Without the shelf? Where's it going to sit? Or hang? Nowhere. It needs somewhere to sit. It needs an entire foundation. And of course, we know Sayyida Zahra, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hasan, Imam Hussein, they all are parts of that. But Imam al-Askari says, "An-Nabi, qalbu Nabi huwa al-mishkat." The heart of the Prophet is the entire mishkat. That's the mishkat, as Imam al-Askari tells us, that contains the entire ummah. The entire ummah. Ali, Fatimah, Hasan, Hussein, alayhim as-salam, afdal as-salatu was-salam, the wick, the oil, the light, everything can't be there without the mishkat. There's can't be a lantern without the mishkat. And the heart of the Prophet is the mishkat of the ummah. It's what unites us, regardless of our differences with one another. So we as Shia, as Imam al-Askari tells us, honor no one like we honor the Prophet. Nobody is given honor like the Prophet because he's the mishkat. Everything else relies on the mishkat. Khalas, that is a fundamental principle, then everything begins. This is a teaching of our 11th Imam. In two ways I've brought it to you. In two traditions from the 11th Imam. Of the things that he wants us to know. We're here to remember his shahadat. So we want to take something home and ask ourselves, what does he want us to know? So the Prophet, coming back to the Bedouin Arab, and I won't take too much time of yours tonight. I know it is a weeknight. Look at what the Prophet says. It's absolutely amazing. Listen to this, brothers. He says, if you can't free a slave, And you can't forgive or mend ties or give to the person who's oppressed you from your family. Let's say these things don't apply to you, to the Arab, to this Bedouin, to you, to me. فَكَفَّ لِسَانِكَ إِلَّا مِنْ الْخَيْرِ. Then hold your tongue except from what is good to be said. At least control your mouth. على الأقل. At least this tongue can be just for khair. And even when you want to criticize someone, you say it in such a way that it doesn't come across. It's ishara, it's enough. You just indicate to it. And even that is in such a polite, decorum, with such decorum and respect. Again, we're not speaking about Netanyahu here. We're speaking about people from among this ummah. Your brothers and your sisters. Your neighbors. Even non-Muslims. People who are just good at heart. They have not done anything to anybody. This is a message of Islam. This is a message of the Prophet. This is a message of Imam Askari. كَفَّ لِسَانَكَ إِلَّا مِنَ الْخَيْرِ. Amazing. I'll end with an example. Aga Hassan Amuli, one of our great Urafa, philosophers, scholars, great scholars, student of Allama Tabatabai, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. He passed away a few years ago in Qom al-Muqaddasa. He says in one of his speeches, you can find it on YouTube, I think, with English subtitles if you look it up. It's not some story. Like, he himself is saying this. He said that there was a teacher, I don't remember the name of that teacher now, but that he was trying to get closer to. And one day he asked his friend to tell the teacher, maybe it was Mirza Qadi or someone, Sheikh Qadi, he says, remind him that I also want classes with him. I also want to know him. I also want to have an audience with him. And Allama tells his student, Aga Hassan Zadeh, or rather Aga Hassan Zadeh then finally gets to meet him, and he tells him, how did you speak to them? He's thinking, how did you speak to them? So he finally gets to meet this teacher, to get an audience. He tells him, how did you speak to them? So what are you talking about? I'm here for dars, class. What do you mean, how did I speak to them? He was so embarrassed. He says, my teacher told me, why did you do that? Your family is God's amana that has been entrusted with you. So Aga Hassan Zadeh did this, La ilaha illallah. Yes, it was this one time where I was at home. I was very tired. The kids were making a lot of noise in the house. And I got up and I spoke very sternly to my family. And I regretted it immediately. I was tired. And the teacher is telling him, you want to come and study with me? And you spoke angrily to your children, to your family, just because they're children playing in the house? If you can't control that much, bye. This is a message of Rasulullah. This is a message of Islam. This is an ethical, moral challenge to rise up. Impulse control, sacrifice. This is what it means to be a better human being. A pure human being. Of course, Aga Hassan Zadeh was an arif. For people at this level, for them, even this moment is a great life-changing moment for them. Right? Just that one moment that he got very irritated without any reason, really. He was just tired. The greatest climb, inshallah, begins at home. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And this is exactly what Imam al-Askari tells his companion Ahmad ibn Ishaq. He says, لَعَقَبَ قُعُودٌ شَعِيدٌ أَمْرُهَا صَعْبٌ مَسْلَكُهَا عَظِيمٌ. He says, "O Ahmad ibn Ishaq," in his letter to his companion, he says, "The path is steep. I worry for you. مَسْلَكُهَا عَظِيمٌ. Its way is great, it's lofty. بَلَاؤُهَا قَدِيمٌ. The trials are well known, are tested and true. They're in the first books that Allah has sent, في زبر الأولى." He's writing to Ahmad ibn Ishaq about the Surah Al-Balad again, right? These ayats, these few verses from Surah Al-Balad. Why? Because he says to him, without your Imam and his Sunnah and his life, you will not be able to traverse this path I fear for you. Ahmad ibn Ishaq was one of his great close companions. But he says, even I fear that you are slipping at times from holding fast to our Sunnah. Because the path is not easy. But with the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, we can travel through it. And be successful and be victorious. Most importantly, victorious over this ego. Over arrogance, pride, anger, greed, the fear of losing a little. We overcome that, and when we overcome that, then we can begin to really experience the blessings of the Prophet in our life. Then his rahmah becomes like actualized. Becomes a part of our life. We live with the Prophet. We live with the A'immah. We feel them in our life. This is what the Imam wanted from his companions. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It was during the time of Imam Askari alayhi salam that the situation of the Shia was absolutely terrible. Mu'tamad and Mutawakkil, the combination of both of them, these two Abbasid caliphs and leaders, made life absolutely intolerable for the Imams. But imagine, despite all of this, look at what the Imam has contributed. Just think about that for a moment, the sacrifice of the Imam. Did you know that when Mu'tamad, was Mu'tamad or Mutawakkil, I don't remember which one now, it doesn't matter which Khalifa it was, both of them were Zalim, or oppressors. When they moved Imam al-Hadi and Imam al-Askari from Medina to Samarra, or Saraman Ra'a, they put them in the worst and most impoverished and dirtiest part of this new city. This was the first test that they had. So this was their home. This was their home, which was a prison. It was a prison in a military camp. It's what's called Askari. Askari is military, army. The army base where they lived. And they were kept in that army base, where the caliph had moved the capital temporarily from Baghdad to Samarra, which is just north of Baghdad. Fine. It was also during this time that, especially during the 11th Imam's time, his father's time, that there was increasing hatred towards Ahlul Bayt. Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani narrates in Maqat al-Talibiyin, one of the great scholars, he was a Zaydi actually, historian who writes about the tragedies of Ahlul Bayt, of the children of Abu Talib. In this book, and it's a historical work, so it's an important work to narrate from, he says that one of the reasons why Mutawakkil destroyed the grave of Imam Hussein was why? He used to have singers in his court. Female singers. So you would invite them. They were probably his own slaves. They would come and sing and do all kind of inappropriate things in his court. one of these singers went missing. He went looking for her. He sent out a party to look for this person, this woman. The singer returns with the group. إِلَى أَيْنَ حَجَجْتُمْ? Or he asks her, where did you go? She says, I went for Hajj. He says, فَأَيْنَ حَجَجْتُمْ فِي شَعْبَانَ? Where have you gone for Hajj? And this is Sha'ban. Sha'ban, there's no Hajj. إِلَى قَبْرِ أَبِي عَبْدِ اللَّهِ الْحُسَيْنِ ibn Ali. That even that sinner who is singing songs knows that the only way for her to reform her life and her salvation and to begin that change is to go to Hussein ibn Ali. Think about the value of ziyarat of Imam Hussein. Bab Rahmatullah al-Wasi'a. He's just the door of God's mercy. Safinatun Najat. Even the singers. Maybe she would, inshallah, she didn't return to that sin. That's the point here. That despite all the guna and sin that she's done, she found a way to go from Samarra to Karbala to visit Al-Hussein ibn Ali. Salamullahi alayhi. The Khalifa found out. And he got so angry. And of course, he already hated Ahlul Bayt. So he just uses it as an excuse. That he had a Jewish man, according to the traditions here, this is not, no one's generalizing people, this happened to be a Jewish person at that time, destroy the grave of Hussein. And then he appointed, Tabari tells us, somebody to imprison the people who would go there and put them in a special dungeon. Then he went to Medina and he put a complete blockade on all the Sadat of Medina. To such an extent that we read Mu'mineen in the Ahadith that the women of Ahlul Bayt at a time only had one chadar to pray with. This is the difficulties that they had in Medina. They weren't even given the tools to purchase new materials. That this is the level of poverty that they experienced, Ahlul Bayt, especially the family of the Prophet in Medina, the Sadat from Banu Hashim. Complete blockade. No one was allowed to visit them. No one was allowed to see them. Complete deprivation. Partly because, or connected partly in some way, to his singing woman going for ziyarah. So instead of singing to him, she's going to save her soul with Hussein ibn Ali. And this was the level of torture, boycott, imprisonment, deprivation. He put Imam Askari into a prison with a lion. Right? We read traditions that even threw lions inside in an attempt to just eat him. They would play it. It was, na'udhu billah, I won't use the, but you could think, where are lions found in captivity, right? That's how he treated Imam al-Askari. We don't use those words about Imam, of course, na'udhu billah. But that's how they would treat him. This is the level, I don't know if you can imagine the level of deprivation, the level of complete poverty, abject poverty. Yet millions tonight are saying, Assalamu alayka ya Hasan Askari. Millions are visiting him tonight. I saw the pictures from Samarra tonight. Millions are on their way, are already there, or were there in Samarra. Where is Mutawakkil and Mu'tamad, and where is Imam al-Askari and Imam al-Hadi today? Salamullahi alayhim. He was poisoned and died on the 8th of Rabi al-Awwal. His brother Ja'far, known as Ja'far al-Kadhab, the lying Ja'far, stepped in to try to lead the prayers, and then a 4-year-old boy came in front of him. It's an amazing story. A 4-year-old boy comes in front of him. Muhammad al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraja, 4 years old. And he said, Allahu Akbar. And the people are watching. This is the history. This boy comes in front. Everyone's looking. What is going on? And he leads the Salat al-Janazah. And that moment where he appeared, they searched for him. And he went into ghaiba, to occultation. They could not find him. And this spot in history is preserved. My dear youth, my dear shabab, you can go and visit the spot today. It's there still. It's not gone. Our history is there. It's present. Those stairs are there. It's there still. It's the same place, the same venue. Let us go to the grave of Hussein ibn Ali just for a moment tonight. Because of the sacrifices that Ahlul Bayt had for Imam Hussein. Well after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Well after. We read in traditions that Zainab comes to the grave of her brother. And she begins to look at her grave. Salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. And she says, "Oh my brother, is this you? Are you the son of Fatimah? Are you the son of Ali?" That when she sees his body, she cannot recognize it physically. Physically. This is why she's saying this. Right? Because we read in the traditions that he was torn to bits, to pieces. Right? His garments and everything was torn. Pieces of his body were in shambles. She's saying, can I recognize you? Can you imagine that moment of Zainab meeting Hussein ibn Ali? She says, "You are the blood of my heart. You are my protector. You are my brother. Is this the son of Fatima? Is this the son of Ali?" Just imagine that moment that she stands there in front of his grave. And she's trembling. She's saying, "Who are you, O Hussein? Who are you?" Imagine that moment. She says, "I beg you by my grandfather Rasulullah, speak to me. Jawabni, Ya Hussein. Give me jawab now, please, my brother, please." Can you imagine that moment for those who have come from Arba'in? If we think our ziyarat is something, what is the ziyarat of Zainab bint Ali to Hussein, her brother? Asking him, "Oh my brother, answer me, answer me. You are the son of Fatima and Ali ibn Abi Talib. By the right of my mother, answer me. Oh my soul, answer me." This is the conversation between Zainab bint Ali and Hussein. That only the heavens could understand. Matem Hussein.
ताबूत ये इमाम हसन अस्करी का है। ताबूत ये इमाम हसन अस्करी का है। جو فاطمہ کا لال ہے بیٹا علی کا ہے، تابوت یہ امام حسن عسکری کا ہے، دو مومنوں امام زمانہ کو تعزیت، روتی ہیں آنکھیں جس کی یہ با اسی کا ہے، جو فاطمہ کا لال ہے بیٹا علی کا ہے، ایک شام میں ہی قید نہیں آل پیمبر، ایک شام میں ہی قید نہیں آل پیمبر، بغداد کے زندان میں بھی بیٹا نبی کا ہے، ہائے وہ قید ہائے وہ عابد وہ بیبیاں، نوحہ یہ قید خانے میں جب عسکری کا ہے، تابوت یہ امام حسن عسکری کا ہے، جو فاطمہ کا لال ہے بیٹا علی کا ہے، تابوت یہ امام حسن عسکری کا ہے، یا حسین 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 یا حسین،
الوداع 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 اے حسین، الوداع 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 اے حسین، الوداع یہ صدائے فغاں اور یہ مجلسیں، یہ صدائے فغاں اور یہ مجلسیں، ماتم و نوحہ اور غم کی یہ زینتیں، ماتم و نوحہ اور غم کی یہ زینتیں، چاہتا ہے یہ دل یوں ہی قائم رہے، 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 پھٹتا ہے دل کس طرح یہ کہے، الوداع 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 اے حسین، الوداع 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 اے حسین، الوداع 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 اے حسین۔
میرے مہمان ہے آخری یہ سلام،
مہمان ہے آخری یہ سلام،
تجھ پہ قربان ہے آخری یہ سلام،
قربان ہے آخری یہ سلام،
شاہ ذیشان ہے آخری یہ سلام،
شان ہے آخری یہ سلام،
شاہ ذیشان ہے آخری یہ سلام،
شان ہے آخری یہ سلام،
دل ہے ویران ہے آخری یہ سلام، الوداع الوداع
الوداع اے حسین،
الوداع
الوداع الوداع اے حسین،
مومنو غم کی یہ آخری رات ہے،
غم کی یہ آخری رات ہے،
دیدہ نم کی یہ آخری رات ہے،
نم کی یہ آخری رات ہے،
اشک پہم کی یہ آخری رات ہے،
ہم کی یہ آخری رات ہے،
اشک پہم کی یہ آخری رات ہے،
ہم کی یہ آخری رات ہے،
شہ کے ماتم کی یہ آخری رات ہے، الوداع الوداع الوداع
اے حسین،
الوداع الوداع
الوداع اے حسین،
بخش دے ہو گئی ہو جو کوئی خطا،
ہو جو کوئی خطا،
حق خدمت نہ ہم سے ادا ہو سکا،
خدمت نہ ہم سے ادا ہو سکا،
غم یہی ہے نہ جی بھر کے ماتم کیا،
یہی ہے نہ جی بھر کے ماتم کیا،
غم یہی ہے نہ جی بھر کے ماتم کیا،
یہی ہے نہ جی بھر کے ماتم کیا،
تیری خاطر نہ کیوں اپنا سر دے دیا، الوداع الوداع الوداع
اے حسین،
الوداع
الوداع الوداع اے حسین،
گرجیے سال بھر پھر کریں گے یہ غم،
یہ سال بھر پھر کریں گے یہ غم،
روئیں گے پھر تیرے غم میں مل کر باہم،
روئیں گے پھر تیرے غم میں مل کر باہم،
اور اگر مر گئے تو یہ ہوگا
اور
عالم،
اگر مر گئے تو یہ ہوگا عالم،
اور اگر مر گئے تو یہ ہوگا
اور
عالم،
اگر مر گئے تو یہ ہوگا عالم،
ہائے افسوس جی بھر کے روئے نام، الوداع الوداع الوداع
اے حسین،
الوداع
الوداع الوداع اے حسین،
الوداع اے حسین اے حسین الوداع،
اے حسین، اے حسین الوداع،
الوداع اے شہ مشرقین الوداع،
اے شہ مشرقین الوداع،
بنت احمد کے نور عین الوداع،
احمد کے نور عین الوداع،
بنت احمد کے اے نور عین الوداع،
احمد کے نور عین الوداع،
ہے مجاہد کے لب پر یہ بین الوداع، الوداع 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 اے حسین، الوداع 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 اے حسین، الوداع 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 اے حسین، الوداع 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 اے حسین،
یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، اللہم صل علی محمد.
Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.